The bird came home alone. Scorched metal groaned as the Black Hawk limped onto the landing pad, its rotors barely turning, tail dragging smoke like a ghost. No radio contact. No call sign. No signal. Ground crews froze, until the side door hissed open. A single boot hit the ground. Then another. Captain Aria Vale stood there, bloodied, burned, breathing. Alive. They said she'd never survive. But her silent hawk had found its way home through fire. The sky over FOB Heroism was still, unusually quiet for a war zone. The midday heat shimmered off the cracked tarmac, distorting the horizon into waves of ghostly motion. Then, a sound. Distant at first, a soft thump-thump-thump that built into a broken rhythm. Not like the usual returning flight patterns. It was slower. Uneven. Off. All eyes turned skyward as a shape emerged from behind the smoke-hazed ridge. A helicopter, no, what was left of one, drifted toward the airstrip. The tail was scorched. Rotor blades wobbled unnaturally, coughing through each revolution. Black smoke curled out from its undercarriage like a funeral veil. A junior airman stepped forward, mouth parting in disbelief. "Sir, is that?" The base's flight commander, Major Reyes, lowered his binoculars. His jaw tensed. No radio ping. No transponder. That thing's flying dark. It wasn't just flying dark. It was flying dead. The tower scrambled for a line of communication. "Unidentified aircraft, this is Heroism Tower. You are entering restricted airspace. Respond immediately or we will initiate intercept protocol." No response. The bird kept coming, slow, defiant, silent. Alarms flared. Ground crew sprinted to designated zones. Medics rushed toward the pad with stretchers ready, unsure if anyone would still be breathing. The Black Hawk came in too hot, dipped, then righted itself like a wounded animal clawing for balance. It slammed into the ground with a groan of metal, bouncing once before collapsing in a smoking heap. Still, the rotors spun. Slower now. Whining, scraping against themselves like bones grinding together. No one exited. Weapons were raised. No one fired. Then, movement. The side hatch creaked, its mechanism sputtering before giving way with a metallic gasp. A boot hit the tarmac. Charred. Shaking. Another followed. Then a hand, bloodied and braced against the frame. She emerged in full pilot gear, helmet off, hair soaked in sweat and soot, face streaked with ash. Her name patch was half melted, but everyone knew the stance, the eyes, Captain Aria Vale. She took one staggering step forward, then another. Her left arm hung limp, and her flight vest was scorched across the chest. She was breathing hard, but breathing. Silence fell across the pad. Even the engines seemed to fall quiet. A voice, half whispered, "Jesus Christ, she's alive." Aria turned toward the control tower, her vision fogged with pain, but her expression unmistakably defiant. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Behind her, the Black Hawk finally gave in, its engine coughed once, then died. 3 days earlier. FOB Heroism sat like a scab in the middle of nowhere, a slab of dust, concrete, and coiled tension tucked into enemy-contested hills. The kind of place where silence never lasted long, and peace was always just a pause between mortar fire. Captain Aria Vale sat alone in the hangar's shadow, perched on an ammo crate with a wrench in her hand and grease smeared along her forearm. Her flight suit hung loose at the waist, unzipped to the ribcage in the desert heat. She was elbow-deep in the belly of her Black Hawk, unit call sign, Ghost 7, tightening a rotor linkage like it owed her money. She could have ordered one of the techs to do it. But Aria didn't believe in trusting a machine that hadn't felt her hands. She also didn't believe in sleep. Still rebuilding that bird like it's gonna apologize? Lieutenant Rami Cho approached from the maintenance bay, cradling a pair of cold water bottles. Aria didn't look up. "It talks back less than the officers do." Cho smirked, handing her a bottle. Most people would be grounded after the Grey Top op. You should be in Germany getting your spine scanned and a medal pinned. Let them keep the medal, she muttered, twisting the cap. Wasn't mine to earn. They stood in silence, the whine of distant drones humming low in the background. Behind Aria, etched faintly in chalk on the side panel of her hawk, Kelly. A name. A ghost. Cho noticed her looking at it and tried to shift the mood. You hear about the evac team that got cut off past Ridge 14? Aria froze mid-sip. Medics? Yeah. MASH unit, small team. They were patching up a downed patrol when the canyon got flanked. Last update had them holed up in a crumbling farm compound. No extraction possible, not without wings. He hesitated. Your brother's team, I think. Lieutenant Vale. Red Squad. The bottle slipped from Aria's fingers, hitting the tarmac with a dull splash. She turned to Cho, eyes suddenly alive. They're still out there? For now. Command marked the route as black. No fly. Too many SAMs. Too hot. They're calling it unrecoverable. Aria was already walking toward the flight ops center. Aria, wait. Cho caught up, dropping his voice. They're saying even drones can't get in. You're thinking of going after them? She didn't slow. I'm not thinking. You'll be grounded. Court-martialed. Only if I fail. She reached the operations terminal and tapped the screen to pull coordinates. The heat maps were ugly, a spiderweb of red threat zones. Her fingers hovered over the plotted route like she could will a corridor open. Cho stood beside her, quietly. He's your only family left, isn't he? She nodded once. And if he wasn't? Her voice came quiet, hard. I made a promise to someone else once. I didn't keep it. She locked eyes with him. I'm not making that mistake again. The war room smelled like stale coffee and burnt electronics. Maps glowed across the central table, pulsing with red zones and threat signatures. A wall of screens streamed live drone feeds, thermal scans, and static-laced comms chatter. Most of it was bad news. Captain Aria Vale stepped inside unannounced, her flight vest slung over one shoulder, eyes sharp and unblinking. Around her, officers leaned over intel feeds, muttering about no-fly corridors and compromised grid sectors. At the center, Colonel Dietrich, the base CO, pointed at a digital terrain overlay showing a ridge and valley sector pulsing red. SAM nests here, and here. That's a hornet's nest. Any airframe we send in gets turned to ash in under 3 minutes. Aria approached the table slowly, zeroing in on a red circle flashing with the label. MASH 7, last signal, 1742 Zulu. Colonel, she said, keeping her tone level, I need to see that sitrep. Dietrich turned. Captain Vale. Not your sector. I heard there's a medic team stranded east of Ridge 14. Confirmed? He sighed, already tired of the conversation. Confirmed. 6-person unit. Ground patrol got hit. Medics stayed behind to stabilize the wounded. 2 attempts to reach them failed. We lost a drone trying to map exfil routes. He gestured to the map. That zone is air denied. Ground denied. Everything denied. Aria stepped closer. Let me go in. Absolutely not. I'll go in low, follow the canyon lines. I know that terrain. You're not hearing me. He cut her off. This isn't bravado. This is suicide. We don't even know if they're still alive. Aria's eyes flicked to a side panel listing call signs and ID numbers. Her breath caught in her throat. There it was. LT Caleb Vale, Red Squad, MASH 7. Her brother. She stared at the name for a long moment, jaw clenched. Dietrich noticed. I'm sorry, Captain. I know he's family, but... No, you don't, she snapped, her voice cutting through the static in the room. He's all I've got. Silence. A few glances exchanged between junior officers. Aria took a breath. I've flown that valley. I know every blind spot, every line of sight, every shadow. Give me Ghost 7 and a go code. I'll get them out. Dietrich shook his head. There's no support. No air cover. Comms will die the second you cross the ridge. You'll be flying blind into a meat grinder. Then I'll fly silent. The colonel leaned in, his voice low and final. Request denied. Stand down, Captain. That's an order. Aria didn't blink. Understood, she said quietly. She turned and walked out, slowly, deliberately, past the glowing screens and flashing red warnings. Her pace didn't quicken until she was back in the hallway, where the buzzing tension of the war room gave way to the silent hum of decision. By the time she stepped back into the hangar, her mind was already flying ahead, mapping a route through L. The hangar buzzed with late-night tension, diesel fumes, humming generators, the low whir of maintenance drones gliding between aircraft. Aria stood beside Ghost 7, her fingers trailing the scarred panel beneath the cockpit. Her jaw was tight. Her mind louder than the bass. She turned at the sound of boots crunching gravel. Colonel Dietrich stood there, flanked by Major Reyes, the flight ops commander. Neither looked pleased. You didn't even wait a full hour to ignore my order, did you? Dietrich said. I haven't taken off, Aria replied coolly. Yet. Reyes stepped forward, holding a tablet. You seriously considering this? These are the updated satellite threat maps. He turned the screen to her, the entire route to the extraction point glowed red and orange. We've counted 3 SAM emplacements, 2 mobile AA units, and at least 1 drone with infrared lock capability. You fly into that, you're not coming back. I don't plan to give them the chance, she said. Low flight path. Under the ridgeline. No beacon. No radio. No lights. Total blackout. Reyes stared at her. You're not Batman, Vale. She gave a thin smile. Didn't say I was. I'm the bird. Dietrich folded his arms. You're out of line, Captain. This isn't just insubordination. It's suicide. Aria's eyes hardened. They are still out there. You don't know that. I can't know they're dead if I don't go check. Silence settled, thick and tense. Dietrich's voice lowered, almost pleading now. You're one of our best pilots. You saved lives at Grey Top. Hell, your flight logs are used to teach risk response. But this? He looked toward the valley map pinned on the hangar wall. This isn't heroism. This is a death wish. Aria didn't flinch. Maybe. But if I don't fly, I have to live knowing I stayed behind when I could have made a difference. That's worse than death. Reyes stepped back. You're not getting a crew. I don't need one, she said. The fewer on board, the lighter she flies. One by one, she'd already asked the other pilots. Some gave her the same speech as Dietrich. Others just shook their heads, looking away. They all believed the same thing, she wouldn't survive. No one volunteered. No one joined her. She was on her own. Dietrich stared at her for a long time. You walk out that gate and power that bird, you're done. Stripped of rank. There'll be a tribunal. You'll lose your wings. I know. He stepped closer, his voice low. Why, Vale? She looked him in the eye. Not defiant, resolved. Because if I don't come back, at least someone will know I tried. Without another word, she turned back to Ghost 7 and climbed into the cockpit. The colonel didn't stop her. He didn't salute. He just watched as the woman they all said wouldn't survive began to prep her bird in silence. The clock on the hangar wall ticked past 0200. Most of the base slept, or tried to, heads buried in cots, dreams crowded by mortar blasts and unanswered questions. But in Bay 3, under a veil of half-light and shadow, Ghost 7 came to life. Captain Aria Vale moved with purpose, every step deliberate. She moved like a woman who had already made peace with the worst outcome, and didn't care. Fuel lines hissed. Rotors were unpinned. Diagnostics ran cold and quiet. No flight crew. No prep team. Just Aria and the bird. A shadow broke the silence. Lieutenant Rami Cho, flight engineer, approached slowly, holding a worn rucksack and a headset. He didn't speak right away. Just handed her the bag. I stocked emergency injectors, field bandages, 2 mags, and 4 smoke sticks, he said. You're gonna want them on the ground. Aria didn't look up. I'm going alone. Yeah, I figured you'd say that, Cho muttered. So I pre-primed your countermeasures and scrubbed your call sign from the outbound logs. She paused, finally meeting his eyes. He gave a crooked half-smile. Doesn't mean I agree. Just means I remember who flew me out of a crater in Greytop when nobody else would. A moment passed, enough for Aria to nod once. Enough for everything unsaid to be heard. Thanks, she said. Cho turned to leave. Then stopped. You know they'll never let you back in the air after this, right? She looked toward the night sky, endless, black, and full of danger. Doesn't matter, she said. I only need one more flight. Alone now, she climbed into Ghost 7's cockpit. The interior was dim, stripped down to essentials. No co-pilot. No gunner. Every ounce of weight counted. This bird had been through hell and back with her, and tonight, they'd go again. She flipped the ignition. Low Battery on. Engines spooled to a whisper. The dashboard flickered alive. No lights. No radio. Just silence. She looked out over the tarmac, empty, wide, lit only by the moon. Her hands gripped the controls. Then, softly, to no one but the dark. You said I wouldn't survive. You didn't say I wouldn't try. With a subtle twist of the throttle, Ghost 7 lifted off the ground, low, slow, quiet. The chopper rose just high enough to clear the outer wall, then dipped hard into the canyon beyond the base perimeter. Flying dark. Flying blind. The terrain swallowed her instantly, cliffs rising on both sides, the Black Hawk threading the needle like a ghost through a graveyard. She banked left, brushing the ridgeline. Then dropped altitude again, hugging the rocks so tightly her skids nearly scraped shale. Radar couldn't see her. Comms couldn't hear her. But she was out there. One bird. One pilot. One impossible mission. The war, for a moment, held its breath. The sun had just begun bleeding over the eastern ridge as Ghost 7 crested the final canyon wall, her paint darkened with ash, her rotors straining from the low, erratic flight. Below, the terrain opened into a battered valley, the coordinates of MASH 7. And hell. Smoke billowed from a half-collapsed farmhouse surrounded by shattered concrete barriers and spent casings. A rusted UN med truck burned near the tree line, belching flames. Automatic fire raked the perimeter from the ridge above, sharp, methodical bursts. Enemy positions dug in tight. Aria's eyes swept the carnage. There. A cluster of medics and soldiers huddled in a crater near the farmhouse. Red squad insignias. One of them was dragging a wounded soldier behind a flipped generator box. The team was alive, barely holding. She radioed nothing. There was no time. Aria nosed Ghost 7 forward and dropped altitude fast, too fast. The Black Hawk shuddered as she came in low, rotors spitting up dirt and smoke. Rounds clanged off the armor. Shrapnel hit the windshield like gravel in a storm. She forced the chopper into a tight landing pattern, rotating the fuselage to shield the pinned team with the Hawk's armored side. Dust and fire swirled. Bullets tore past. Aria kicked open the side hatch, leaned out, and waved. Go! Move! Now! They didn't hesitate. One by one, the medics and soldiers sprinted through the chaos. A young lieutenant helped a bloodied comrade limp aboard. Another tossed in supply crates. Then, him. Caleb Vale, her brother. Face streaked with dirt, arm bloodied, but eyes clear. He froze when he saw who was flying. Aria? No time, she shouted. Get your people in. He helped the last medic climb in. 8 souls total. 8 lives. Aria slammed the throttle forward. Lift off. The Black Hawk screamed as it clawed upward, heavy with passengers, nose tilted to compensate for the extra weight. Below, muzzle flashes tracked their ascent. Then, impact. A fiery burst exploded against the cockpit. Aria flinched as the glass shattered. A searing heat tore through her side. Sparks erupted across the dashboard. The controls jerked violently. Sirens blared. System failure. She gritted her teeth, blood slicking the side of her neck. Her vision swam. Ghost 7 yawed hard left. Come on, girl, she whispered, fighting to stay conscious. Not yet. She flicked the manual override. One rotor dropped speed, unbalanced. The chopper wobbled through the rising air, engines groaning in pain. Caleb crawled into the cockpit, grabbed her shoulder. Aria, you're hit. Keep them down, she muttered, barely conscious. Almost clear. A final lurch. A second explosion flared behind them, but the Hawk soared forward, over the ridge, just beyond the kill zone. Then, her body slumped. Blood soaked her flight suit. Her hands slipped from the controls. The last thing she heard before everything went black was her brother yelling her name and the rotors fading into a low, lonely hum. Darkness. Darkness gave way to static. A high-pitched whine filled her skull before anything else. Aria's eyes flickered open to smoke and flickering light. The cockpit canopy above her was spiderwebbed with cracks. Dried blood crusted her temple. Her side burned like fire. Her hands were still on the controls, slack, trembling. She blinked hard, struggling to focus. Ghost 7 was still flying. Somehow. The Black Hawk groaned like a wounded animal, veering slightly with every gust. Her HUD was shattered. Flight indicators flickered erratically or blinked dead. The control stick was stiff, sluggish. Hydraulic assist, gone. She was hand-flying a half-dead bird on raw instinct. She coughed, sharp pain rippling through her ribs. Wet. Probably broken. She touched her side and winced. Blood. Not superficial. Status. She rasped, then stopped. No one answered. She turned her head, slow and aching. The cabin behind her was a mess of smoke, gear, and bodies. Her passengers were slumped, some groaning. Others still. The medic who'd been stabilizing the wounded was unconscious against the wall. Her brother, gone from the seat beside her. She reached for the comm switch. Flipped it. Nothing but dead air. Base, this is Ghost 7, she said hoarsely. Inbound with survivors. Multiple wounded. We are airborne. I repeat, we are. Static. Deadline. No beacon. No signal. They were alone in enemy skies. She looked to the fuel gauge. Nearly dry. Her breathing quickened. Altitude low. Terrain unknown. All maps were corrupted, the NAV screen just blinked a frozen grid. She had no radar. No GPS. No co-pilot. No help. She tried banking the chopper slightly to the east, trusting memory more than instruments. The controls protested, she could feel the weight in her arms, the strain in every mechanical bone of the Hawk. Sweat beaded on her brow. Her hands began to shake. Not from fear, from blood loss. Pain flared again. She gritted her teeth and pressed her arm to her wound, trying to stem the warmth spreading beneath her vest. Her vision dimmed for a second. Just a second, but long enough to feel the edge of the abyss rising to meet her. She coughed again, this time, red on her glove. This was it. This was the moment the stories end. When the bird drops. When the hero doesn't come back. When every medal, every mission, every near miss finally runs out. Aria Vale was going to die in the sky, like so many had warned. And yet, her fingers stayed on the stick. The hawk still flew. Somehow. She took one ragged breath. Then another. Her voice barely audible as she whispered into the void. Not yet. The sky was bleeding smoke. Gray and orange tendrils drifted across the shattered horizon as Ghost 7 limped through the air, wounded and wheezing. Below, the mountains twisted like jagged teeth, ridgelines scarred by fire, valleys veiled in ash. Somewhere down there, enemies watched the skies. Waiting. But they didn't see her. Because Aria Vale refused to die loud. Her fingers trembled on the stick. Her sides screamed with every breath. The pain was no longer sharp, it was dull now, creeping, numbing. She knew what that meant. But she had no time to acknowledge it. Every second alive was a decision. Every second flying was war. The Black Hawk banked hard left as she navigated a familiar ridgeline, Razorback Pass, she remembered. Narrow. Treacherous. Deadly in the best of conditions. But she'd flown it before. In training. In storms. And now, half-conscious and bleeding out. The radio was still dead. The GPS was a frozen screen. The NAV system flickered once, then died for good. Still, she pressed on. She flew by memory now, landmarks etched into her bones, a burnt-out convoy, a crooked ridgeline like a spine, the silhouette of a broken radio tower that once pulsed blue. Her eyes scanned the terrain through a cracked canopy, reading shadows like scripture. Ghost 7 sputtered. Altitude dropped. A warning alarm blared low in the cabin, a ghostly, dying siren. Fuel critical. She didn't care. Couldn't. She adjusted trim manually. Pushed the throttle by feel. Each movement took seconds longer than it should have. But she still had control, barely. Enough to keep the hawk in the air. Enough to carry the wounded souls inside. Her brother stirred once in the back, but didn't wake. Good. Let him sleep. Let them all sleep. She would carry the sky alone. Ahead, lightning flickered across the horizon, not a storm, but distant weapons fire. Anti-air patterns. Intercept zones. The long arm of the enemy. She dropped altitude again, hugging the terrain so tight the rotors nearly kissed the mountainside. Still flying. Still silent. Still alive. She passed a dead village, rooftops collapsed, ash curling from blackened beams. She remembered delivering food there, once. Before everything fell apart. Now, it was just another waypoint. Her pulse was slowing. But her grip never faltered. She could feel the bones of the Black Hawk humming with her own. They were fused now, woman and machine, pain and purpose. Each groan of the rotors was her breath. Each flicker of warning light was her heartbeat. And somehow, impossibly, the mountains began to fall away. The terrain opened. Wide. Familiar. The edge of friendly territory. No flares. No radar ping. No escort. But she was close. So close. Aria narrowed her eyes against the smoke and whispered, more to herself than the world. Almost home. The airfield was quiet. A heavy silence hung over Outpost Reading, broken only by the distant thrum of turbines and the occasional clipped radio chatter. Inside the flight control tower, a tech leaned back in his chair, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. They'd stopped expecting a signal hours ago. Ghost 7 was 40 minutes past dead. The logbook lay open. A red pen hovered above the Kia/missing column. The radar was clean. The horizon, empty. Until... a faint blip. The tech straightened. Narrowed his eyes. Blinked. Blip. Flickering. Weak. But there. Sir, he called out. We've got something. Colonel Dietrich entered the room seconds later, Reyes at his heels. Unidentified aerial contact. Low altitude. Heading due west, right for us. Dietrich stepped forward. Squinted at the screen. That can't be. Outside, soldiers paused in mid-task. A faint rumble drifted through the canyon. Heads turned. Eyes scanned the horizon. Then, it rose. Over the ridge, silhouetted against the dying firelight of the eastern sky, came a chopper barely recognizable. Ghost 7. Scarred. Blackened. A trail of smoke spiraling behind it like a wound. One of the skids hung loose. Chunks of armor were gone. The tail rotors stuttered against the wind. But it flew. Slower than it should have. Lower than it ought to. And yet, it flew. Down below, medics rushed the landing zone. Emergency crews scrambled. The fire suppression team stood by, jaws slack in disbelief. Ghost 7 came in hot and heavy, lurching as it neared the tarmac. The landing gear screamed as it hit, too hard. The bird bounced once, then groaned into a shaky, half-collapsed skid. Metal sparked. A rear rotor cracked loose. But it stopped. Intact. And then, the side hatch burst open. A figure stumbled out. Captain Aria Vale. Smoke rolled off her shoulders. Her flight suit was charred, shredded in places. Blood smeared the side of her jaw. Her eyes were sunken, her skin pale. But she walked, one slow, staggering step after another. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Behind her, one by one, the medics and wounded began to emerge, alive. Caleb was among them, supporting a bandaged corporal. The young medic who had been unconscious now blinked into the blinding sun, coughing but breathing. Reyes stood frozen. Dietrich removed his cap. No one moved for a long beat. Then the base erupted into motion. Medics rushed forward to take the wounded. Flight crews ran toward the Hawk to put out sparks. The entire tarmac filled with shouting, movement, life. And through it all, Aria stood still. Her knees buckled once, and someone moved to catch her. She raised a hand, not yet. She turned toward the hangar. Toward the same place where they told her not to go. Where they said she'd never come back. And she whispered, only loud enough for herself. Told you I'd make it. Then, finally, she let them carry her. The smoke had settled, but the silence remained. Not the silence of fear or waiting, that was gone. This was something different. Heavier. Sacred. The kind of hush that only arrives when history is being written in real time. The landing zone was still crowded. Medics wheeled stretchers toward triage. Mechanics and fire crews stood frozen near the wreckage, unsure whether to touch it or simply stare. The Black Hawk, Ghost 7, sat hunched on her broken skid, smoldering quietly, as if even the fire no longer had the strength to rage. Command gathered on the edge of the tarmac. Colonel Dietrich removed his glasses and stared at the helicopter as if trying to convince himself it wasn't a hallucination. She shouldn't be here, someone murmured. No way she made it through that fire, another said. A younger tech, eyes wide, replied under his breath. She didn't. Her Hawk did. Aria sat on the back of an ambulance, a medic dressing her wound with practiced gentleness. Her face was pale, streaked with ashen blood. She refused the oxygen mask. Insisted on staying upright. Her posture didn't scream strength. It whispered it. Quiet. Steady. Her brother stood nearby, eyes never leaving her. Alive because of her. All of them were. The chopper groaned as it cooled, metal creaking under the weight of what it had carried. Its paint scorched, tail rotor dangling by threads, fuselage dented like a punched-in lung, and still, it stood. Aria looked back at it. Ghost 7 had been more than a machine that day. It had been her shield, her voice, her will made steel. They'd flown together, bled together. Where others would have turned back, she and her Hawk had pushed through. No words could do it justice. So she didn't try. She stepped down from the ambulance, wincing slightly, then walked, slowly, deliberately, across the tarmac toward the hangar. Each bootstep echoed against the concrete like punctuation. The crowd parted. Someone saluted. She didn't salute back, not out of pride, but exhaustion. Her respect came in another form, the simple act of walking upright after the impossible. As she passed the still smoking bird, she paused. Her hand lifted, resting gently against the battered hull of Ghost 7. A silent thank you. Then, with a breath that trembled but never faltered, she turned away. She didn't look back again. Because she knew the legend had already begun. It would be whispered in the mess halls and flight simulators, scrawled into notebooks and spoken with reverence by new recruits. The Silent Hawk. The one that came back through fire. The one no radar saw. The one no enemy could stop. The one no one believed would return, but did. And at its heart, the woman who refused to quit flying. Even when the sky tried to kill her. Some missions aren't about orders, they're about who you become when no one's watching. If Aria's story moved you, share it. Let others remember the silent ones who fly through fire, not for glory, but for those counting on them to come back. Honor courage. Spread the word. Keep the hawk flying.